Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews Saturday Conversation Show, an interview series where I talk to entertainment personalities, content creators, and filmmakers about their work and their love of film. Today's guest is Danny Stewart, a producer, actor, and writer whose latest book, The Greatest Gangster Movie You've Never Seen, Abe Ferrara's The Funeral, is available now for purchase. Whether it is on the page or on the screen, Danny's prolific and continuous quest to bring the long-lost gems of genre cinema to the light of modern day is to be commended. And his latest work, which I got here, so everyone could see, been reading it over the last week. Really great stuff here, Danny. Congratulations to you, and thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Oh, thank you. And yeah, I've been enjoyed your show. I've been watching it as well. So great work. And your website as well, reading your reviews. And thank you. And you're also a archivist yourself, and a cinephile. So you know how important it is to archive this. You know, hit the history. And as everything is digital now, and and the ever-changing landscape of cinema is obviously changing with streaming. And and just the other day I was watching a, a British gangster film called Gangster #1
Mm-hmm.
on Netflix, and I've got it on DVD anyway. But they cut out they cut out a lot of the violence, and that was the whole point of the film. And it just felt like they just I could have just watched it on DVD. And you know that's why I think it's also good to have you know um, physical media as
Yes.
well. You know, because then at least they can't control what you're watching. So, but yeah, I mean, how are you finding the book, by the way?
I'm really enjoying it. The reason why I think more than anything else is because it's in the title itself, the greatest gangster movie you've never seen. Because I have to admit, when it comes to Ferrara's work, King of New York, Bad Lieutenant, the staples like that, seen those. The Funeral is one that was always been on my radar. Never had a chance to see it. And when I saw your book came out, and I was we're gonna have a discussion, I was like, I got to watch this film, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think it might be his best work, or at least on par with King of New York. It's really a fantastic film. And so reading the book and reading your interviews that you had with the cinematographer, with Abe Ferrara himself, just diving into kind of like the whole kind of crime genre as well. Even the little tribute that the cinematographer's son kind of penned in there as well. I thought it was really that was a really kind of touching moment. So I'm really enjoying it because the movie itself, as I just said, was really good, really fantastic. And I'm really happy that I got a chance to see it. It just goes to show, though, doesn't it, Danny, that sometimes there's just a lot of films out there that people just haven't seen. And what I really dig about your work, especially your books, kind of remind us of these movies that are lost to history. And you kind of say, hey, you got to have another look at this because they're really good. Was that the case with The Funeral as well? Was that something where you're like, I don't think enough people are talking about this movie, and I got to really kind of, put up the flag for this film, so to speak, and get more people kind of get into it. Is that why The Funeral kind of was the subject of your latest kind of like dive into these long lost gems?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I think as well, it's been such a underseen film. It's such a under the radar film, and the ensemble, the cast, the look, the style. I mean, everything about the film is. I mean, it needs to be seen by more people. I think, like you say, in his repertoire of like King of New York, Bad Lieutenant. It's definitely up. I mean, it's as good as those films. In fact, like you say, I think it's as good, or if not better. I think it's like a masterpiece for the genre.
Mm.
And and that's why I kind of wanted to write about it. And I was interested in the making of the film. Became very close friends with the cinematographer, and the themes of like obviously the gangster genre, but it deals with like life and death, and obviously Ferrara's kind of profound philosophy, his kind of religious themes, with his screenwriter Nicky St. John. And Nicky, I think this was the last film that he worked with Nicky, and they kind of separated. But I think it was a great script. Um, I mean, performances, Christopher Walken, bar none, fantastic. I mean, superb. I mean, you had Isabella Rossellini, Annabella Sciarra, Gretchen Mol, Chris Penn, who was just
Chris Penn
phenomenal in the
is
film.
fantastic in this movie. You kind of forget because Chris Penn's one of those actors we kind of like when we think back on his stuff, maybe, Reservoir Dogs, True Romance. Some people who are not into that crime stuff that, maybe they might even think of Footloose and stuff like that, right? You kind of forget just how, this is a Penn we're talking about, right? It's in their blood, like their family, their parents, Sean and Chris's parents are like well, either filmmakers or actors themselves, and so it's like they're really good. And what's really great about what Chris Penn does in this movie is that he can play that anger, which he does so well in other things, but he sings in the film, which is kind of remarkable. The scene where they're in a bar, it's the 1930s, and he just starts singing in the middle of the crowd, like he's the entertainment for the night. His anger is just really kind of just this gripping kind of monstrous kind of thing. You feel scared when you kind of watch it as well, but then there's a sensitivity to performance as well because this is a character who's dealing with some major mental kind of like mental illness here, and he's fantastic in it too. And just continue on with the cast: Benicio del Toro, Vincent Gallo, who in during this time in the 90s was kind of like almost poised to be like the next big kind of thing, and then Brown Bunny came out and kind of like unraveled after that. But yeah, just it's a fantastic movie. And what's really great as well is that it gave me a chance to kind of look up a little more into Abe Ferrara because, like I said, I know his stuff. I've never really done a deep dive on his stuff, but I came across this interview he did around the time to promote the funeral. It was on Conan O'Brien. I don't know if you've ever seen this interview. It's like this
Yes,
infamous kind of thing. And people like now know that around that time, Abe Ferrara was dealing with lots of kind of like, the
demons.
demons issue or what have you. It's kind of just really kind of infamous stuff. Did you watch that interview before you yourself interviewed A Ferrara? Is that something that sticks in your mind when you're doing it? Because of course A Ferrara is now is much different than what he was like 30 years ago, but I'm sure it's something that would have maybe stuck in the back of your mind. You don't know
Oh,
exactly what wild card you're going to get here.
yeah. I mean, I kind of obviously had seen a lot of his interviews, and that was quite a obviously one that kind of I did see it, and he's truly one of a kind. Um, and and obviously, I think he's matured as a filmmaker as well. I mean,
Mm,
he obviously lives in Italy and um, makes films in Europe now. Works with Defoe, a lot,
I love
and
it.
I know that they're trying to get a project going at the moment, which is a gangster film, which I hope that he does get the financing. Um, and I'd love, I hope he does. I mean, they did Pasolini together. The recent films were Tommaso and Siberia, which I still haven't had a chance to see, but they're definitely on my list. And then they did New Rose Hotel. But yeah, it's fascinating filmmaker. He's obviously not a mainstream filmmaker.
Mm,
Um, art house and completely independent. So yeah, I kind of watched the interviews, the Conan interview, and I watched a whole bunch of interviews with him, and so I kind of knew what to expect. But I found that he was um, cool, laid back, to the point, and yeah, I mean, I got on, I got on wonderfully with him. I mean, I love his work, I love his films, and obviously the relationship with him and his cinematographer was they were kind of like they were brothers, and then of course Ken Kelsch, who I want to give a tribute to as well, was very close with Ken, and obviously the book was really personal to me. I I had lost my sister to cancer, and Ken had passed away also with a terminal illness, and so the book was kind of and it, obviously the interview with him, he's talking about life and death, and um, that's kind of the funeral is a meditation on that profound. So it was kind of a really deep personal book, but also I'm glad I did it. I'm really glad. I'm proud that I did it, and I hope more people see the film and look at Abel's work and admire the cinematography, performances, the music, the production design. I want to give a shout out to Charlie Lagola, who was the production designer on the funeral. He'd worked on Bad Lieutenant, but Charlie, he's got a website. He's worked on like Godfather 3. So, but they did something completely different with this film. It was so authentic. Wouldn't you agree? The production design um, and the
I mean,
costumes.
it's
I mean the
fantastic. I mean, the
actual.
production design and the costumes are great because I think, especially in like independent films, um, it's hard to get their hands off. I think, especially like these days, the resources needed to pull off a period piece. But the way that he did in this movie, even though the funeral, if you're going to look at Abe Ferrara kind of terms, much more resourceful than say Driller Killer was back in like in the late 70s, right? This is a lot, or what was that movie he did? Was it Madam X or no, Miss 45, I
Miss
think was the one he
Miss
did.
45, yeah.
Miss 45, yeah, like it's not as independent as that, but still an independent production. And the way that he's able to transport back to the 1930s, especially with I think the costumes, especially, was just simply fantastic. And people have to understand that it's a crime movie, not in the context so much of like the grandiose kind of stuff of say The Godfather, a movie that I think it compares well to if you're going to do like a double bill is Once Upon a Time in America, Sergio
Yeah,
Leone's movie. I think there's like very much tone wise, look wise, period wise as well between those two films that work really well. And that's why it's something that I hope people one day, hopefully, can put The Funeral in the same type of plateau as those kind of crime movies.
absolutely. It's kind of like Miller's Crossing or Road to Perdition. You
Mm.
know, the Prohibition era it was so well captured. You could almost smell it off the screen. Um, I mean, it was just, and that, it wasn't a big budget film. I mean, I'm guessing I did have a look online. Wikipedia said it was 12 million, but then when I spoke to the um, producer and I spoke to the obviously other members of the team, I think it was about 5 or 6 million they had at the time. So it was hardly any. When you think of film budget terms of a film, how much it would cost today with that cast and all the cars and everything. You know, it, you know, 60 to 100 million. I mean, it's hard to. It. I'm sure Road to Perdition was probably budgeted around that sort of budget. So, but yeah, no, definitely, I think it should be held in high esteem. Definitely, Once Upon a Time in America is something that should be. And it's just I'm just so glad you watched it, and I hope more people see it. In fact, yeah, that's what I wanted to do is do the book, and I would love to see more people see the film, and I hope it gets a special edition or a
Mm.
re-release, you know, because I've got the DVD, but it hasn't, like you say, all these other films like King of New York, Bad Lieutenant, Driller Killer. Um, this is the one I think that should be held up even higher, maybe in some regards.
I think
Just,
in
I mean,
next year's 30 years, right? 2026 will be a 30-year anniversary. I think it'd be a perfect time for like some type of re-release or something like that to happen around the film, I think.
yeah, definitely a revival. I mean, I think as well the and just when I think just yeah, like Benicio del Toro, the ensemble
Mm.
was just unbelievable, and I think that it wasn't like glorification either. Like of course I love The Godfather and Godfather 2 and even The Godfather 3, the director's cut, the death of Michael Corleone.
Mm.
Um, I think that it was so a different take on gangsters. You know, it, the ending was haunting. I won't obviously say what happens, but it's a powerful ending. It's unexpected um, and haunting, and obviously being able, you kind of expect that. But it's funny. I was saying that this film is, if you could say it, for an Abel Ferrara film is more mainstream,
Yeah.
but it's still not. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
It's mainstream for Abel, but I kind of see him as kind of like the cult art house inversion of Martin Scorsese in certain ways. Kind of similar backgrounds. They delve into some kind of similar materials where Scorsese's film is kind of like more, say, Stones, Rolling Stones, rock and roll. Abel is more punk rock. You know what I mean? He's like the punk rock version of those worlds and coming together. And it's funny because they both kind of work with some similar
Actors.
people, actors like Harvey Keitel, for example, between both of them. I mean, Bad Lieutenant can easily be. For me, Bad Lieutenant and Mean Streets can easily be like a double bill as well because it's kind of like Harvey Keitel playing these kind of like really tortured kind of like Catholic characters, but like very different, but similar because they deal with the similar material. But yeah, but like the funeral definitely like I think and also think because it was 96 around that time, that whole independent film scene of the 90s was really thriving. And I think that like a director like Abe Ferrara can come across and really put in some really good work there. And I think that that movie in particular, The Funeral, is is definitely been slept on. And I got to say, when I look at your books, I really enjoy the fact that you delve into films that people wouldn't think of need to be delved into. Everyone can write something about Psycho. Everyone can write something about Godfather or Exorcist or whatever. The books that you go dive into, to me, make things really interesting and fascinating because you talk about films that people love, but not everyone knows about. So, for example, War is Hell, making of Hellraiser 3, love Hellraiser 3. Soldier, from script to screen, Soldier being a Kurt Russell film. What was that, like late 90s, early 2000s? Silent Trigger, Dolph
98.
Lundgren. 98,
Dolph
was it?
Lundgren.
Silent Trigger, shooting the film. That's a Dolph Lundgren film. Love that one. Saluting the Blood of Heroes. It talks about the Jugger with the great Rutger Hauer. Now you got the book about the funeral. All these films, like I said, they're cult classics, right? People know them. Some people really love them. But you're the one who's putting pen to paper and is like, I'm going to dive into the making of these films. And as I said, people can write about the same movies over and over and over again. And there's only so many times you can hear about how Jaws was made, you know? And there's only so many people who could be a real kind of like Michael Smith, for example, is really good at writing Jaws books, right? Like he's the guy that you go to for Jaws book, but it's been like there's 100 others as well. And in the same context, Danny, you're kind of like the guy to go to when you want to talk about cult and genre cinema. But what is it about these films in particular that really kind of speak to you that you want to put in the time and effort to kind of dive into and do the interviews and everything else? What is about these films, and particularly films set around the same time period as well? Like, I think Saluting the Blood of Heroes maybe was a little earlier than everything else, but all these other films probably around what Hellraiser 3 was 1993, Soldier 98, Silent Trigger I think was 96, 97 around
That's
that
right.
time.
That's right.
And the Jugger, the Jugger was 89 or something like that,
89.
right? 89, yeah. So
1889. Yeah.
yeah, so around that kind of it was like a decade or so. There was about that time period, and those films in particular really spoke to you that you wanted to dive into it and really get into the gritty about how they were made.
Well, as you say, they're obviously have a fan base, and they're obviously quite a niche market. But I feel that you know greatly inspired to keep the memories of these people alive, and especially when you know uh, everyone, like you say, David Webb Peoples, who had written Soldier and written Blood of Heroes, The Salute of the Jugger. Um, they're all getting old now, and um, I feel as though I love David and his wife Janet, who written 12 Monkeys. They both wrote 12 Monkeys together,
Mm.
and I just felt that it was important to delve into these films because, as you say, as you were saying, that everyone just goes for the typical Godfather, Jaws, uh, you know, the typical kind of mainstream films that everyone knows and everyone loves and everyone talks about. But I felt that it was important to actually talk about, say, like The Funeral. which is such an under the radar film that I feel more people should see. And say I think the title really captures that, because people will be intrigued to see it now. And say Silent Trigger, I really love Silent Trigger. Russell McColhay, who was Australian as well, and obviously
Yep,
directed
Highlander.
Highlander
Yep, and
and
oh
Razorback,
Razorback, yes.
Razorback, and he did Highlander 2, Quickening, and then there was a director's cut of Highlander 2, and then he did The Shadow, and
What was the one he did
Silent
with
Trigger. I felt
Kim Basinger and Val Kilmer? The Real McCoy.
Real
Was that?
McCoy, yeah, that was back in the 90s, wasn't it? That
Yeah,
was the
I'm pretty
90s
sure he
one.
did that one as well. I'm pretty sure.
That's right. That's right.
Mm.
I don't think it was a hit by any means, but
No.
again, he's very much like a stylist, and the Shadow, the film noir aspect. The same thing with Silent Trigger. Actually, I felt it was like Dolph Lundgren's best performance, best work, and I love the atmosphere. It's so atmospheric. Um, the location, one building, flashbacks, the atmosphere. I know Rutger Hauer at one point was going to be in that film and direct
Okay.
it, but then it didn't happen. But I felt like Dolph was quite good and really good in the film, and just the music and it appealed to me, So and again, that's like not a film that anyone's really seen. It's on Amazon, and it's not really and with the Blood of Heroes as well, the Jugger. With that book, I kind of wanted to tap into the whole apocalyptic cinema.
Yep.
So I talked about the history of literature and film and all the genre, and then center pointed my analysis with an interview with David Webb Peoples about how the creation of the Jugger came around. And he'd written it before Mad Max. So but by the time that the film came out, Mad Max had come out, all these other films had come out. So the genre was kind of tiresome or fading out. But again, that film became a cult film, and an actual sport. It became an actual sport. The Jugger actually became a international sport. Obviously, they didn't kill each other, but
There will be something.
yeah. But obviously, that actually became in the zeitgeist, and I'm just glad to be writing about all this history. I think that there's more stories that are just as interesting than the voices of these people will never be heard. So I think it's key to keep the history of their stories, no matter how minute or how people might not know who they are. They're not by any means the big stars of the film. I find that they're these people behind the camera, the designers, costume designers, and makeup artists, producers, and stuff deserve more, praise than everyone assumes that the stars are the always the focus, and obviously they're great, these actors that are in these films. But I feel that that yeah, I wanted to capture the stories of people who make these films, and I just hope that it kind of people will read it, and then watch the films and appreciate what goes into making some of these films, especially because obviously it's a different time now, and it's just completely different now. Everything's different,
Very much so.
even Abel said that to me. A total flux, ever since COVID, everything's changed.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree with that 100%. The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. I want to move on to this game I like to play, Danny, on my show. It's called Choose Between Two. I'm going to give you two options. You're going to choose one, and you're going to elaborate on your answer a little bit. Are you ready to play?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the first options. We're going to do an Abe Ferrara leading man face-off. Christopher Walken or Harvey Keitel?
Oh, that's hard. I would say Harvey Keitel, because I think that the Bad Lieutenant, the performance, you could not replicate that
Hmm.
performance. Um, I don't think any actor could do what he did as good as Harvey did, and the power of that performance is beyond the Oscars. It's beyond the award worthy, and I think there's such a profound performance that even though I love Walking, and Walking at one point was going to play the bad lieutenant,
Oh,
and I'm
interesting.
sure he would have done it in his own way, but he could not have done what Harvey did.
No, no
So
way. Yeah.
that's kind of why I would pick Harvey, um, and then of course Abel had worked with Harvey again on Dangerous Game.
Hmm.
So yeah, and that's another film that I would love to write about as well. It
Is
was
that the
about
one
filmmaking.
with Madonna in it?
Yes, that's right, with
That's
Madonna, yeah,
right.
and James
Yep.
Russo.
Mm.
Another kind of um, interesting piece, um, and almost like Harvey Keitel is playing Abel Ferrara in a way, because
Mm.
it's
Interesting.
about this director who's trying to put this film together and he's completely losing his mind and the chaos of filmmaking. It's almost like pre-Birdman and or pre um, some of these films that have become meta,
Right.
or probably a bit more extreme than that. But yeah, I'd say Harvey Keitel. That would be. I love
Let's,
Walking, but
yep. Let's have a post-apocalyptic film standoff here. Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, or Escape from New York.
uh, um, both genre masterpieces, both cult classics. And obviously, I love Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken, but I would probably pick The Road Warrior because that is just a flawless film. George Miller, um, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, I just think's the best Mad Max film. It's probably the best film of its kind, the best film of its genre, even better than Fury Road or better than Furiosa. And I love all those films,
Yeah,
but I feel
100%.
that
Yeah.
because the rawness of the Road Warrior, it's no CGI. It was real. They filmed it. You could not duplicate that film either. So yeah, I mean, they're both 10 out of 10 films, but yeah, I would say that the Road Warrior for sure. Gibson,
Next one.
George
Go
Miller,
ahead. Yep. I mean, yeah, Vernon Wells, fantastic movie.
Burning Wells,
Hmm.
and
Next
obviously
one.
the feral kid as
Yes.
well, Emil
Yeah.
Minty, who has the boomerang,
Hmm.
and obviously because it's so authentically Australian as well.
Yes.
So when you watch the first Mad Max films, the Americans, if you watch the version, the Americans dubbed it, and then
I haven't seen the dubs, but I've seen scenes of it.
oh god, yeah. I mean, I don't.
Terrible.
It ruined. I mean, it just takes it out of just you know it just yeah. You just wonder why. I guess because they couldn't understand the accents, but
Well, it
that's
was
it's
around
such.
that film came out 79. So it was like there was a bit of the Australian New Wave was about, but it still wasn't enough where, American audiences were comfortable with the Australian accent as yet, which makes it funny though, because the movie outside of the American dub is quintessentially just an Australian looking film in every single way in the landscapes and everything else. So yeah, it is an odd choice by looking back at it now, but I can imagine back then maybe there's a certain amount of ignorance that the American audiences won't understand the Aussie accent. Yeah, it's a possibility. That's pretty much what it
And
is.
of course, then you had the kind of new wave Australian films after that. You had like
Yeah.
Peter Weir,
Hmm.
Gallipoli. I mean, it just launched a whole wave of Australian films. Then obviously because it was so huge.
Exactly right.
I mean, it was just unbelievable. I mean, no one had ever, for its time, no one had ever seen anything like it. See, the stunts were real. They had real gangs, um, bikers, and I mean, they probably wouldn't be able to do it now with how they did it. The permits. They just went and made like a. I mean, it's a. I love that whole series. That not one film's the same. I think that's what's so good about
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Mad Max franchise is that. In fact, George Miller, even though Furiosa was not a success financially, critically it was. But I know that he wants to go and do the Mad Max The Wasteland. He's got the script ready.
Mm.
He was talking about it the other day. I've seen it online, but I hope he does. I mean, I love that world, and it's like a western on wheels, you know. And yeah, I think I love both escape films, and I love um, the Mad Max franchise. But yeah, the Road Warrior is kind of just the undisputed masterpiece. Um, yeah,
Next
that's
one.
that's
Next
sure.
one. You're in the cinema. You're about to sit down, watch a film. What's your go-to snack? Popcorn or candy?
Popcorn.
How do you like your popcorn?
I like a bit of sweet and salt.
Do you ever do
So,
the mix like like maybe like a chocolate kind of like in the popcorn and kind of mix it all up kind of thing? I had
oh yeah,
some people tell
like
me about
toffee.
putting like Maltesers or some other chocolatey or caramelly kind of thing. You mix it up and then you can have both the salt and the sweet at the same time.
Yeah, sometimes I do that. Yeah, I mean, um, my niece, my little niece, she loves all that. She loves having that kind of mixture. So sometimes we do that when we go to the cinema. Um, my local cinema is actually it's a picture dome, and it's kind of like kind of I think my niece calls it like retro. She's only 7 years old, but she kind of calls it like a retro cinema. And
Hmm.
it's like a real has an old feeling to it. Which is nice. And it's not crazy expensive. So yeah, it's yeah. So yeah, I'd definitely say sweet and salty, and sometimes maybe some chocolate as well.
You outside of doing work as a writer, as an author, you've done a whole bunch of other stuff. Acting was in your life for there for a little while. You did short films. You appeared in like BBC kind of specials and such. That's where Danny the Wild Boy kind of comes along and as your
Oh yeah.
kind of like
Oh yeah.
username and all that. I tracked down and watched the episode of that, the BBC I think it was BBC Three Live about Danny the Wild Boy, the national, sorry, BBC, no, BBC One National Treasures Live, Peter the Wild Boy. That was the one that came up there, and I watched that episode there. I saw the shorts that you did. What was it called? A Long Time Gone as well. So you've done some acting there, but you also got your hands in some producing as well, and some really cool documentaries. Again, delving into kind of genre stuff. I remember actually seeing the Hellraiser documentary Leviathan, which is like this mass kind of like if people haven't seen it, if you're a Hellraiser fan, this is like a must watch. Just give yourself a day because it's a mass kind of like hours long, hours and hours and hours, several hours long kind of thing where they talk about Hellraiser and Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. So you worked on that. You've done stuff with the Dead Mouse Productions guys over there as well, with Pennywise doc and the Robodoc doc. And you also did something which is pretty interesting as well in the Ghostbusters documentary, cleaning up this town. You worked on that too. When did all that kind of stuff kind of came into your life? How did you get introduced into doing delve into more the production side of going to these documentaries? And do you find that doing the documentaries is another way of just of being able to present these films to a new audience again, similar to what your writing work is like? Or do you see the documentaries where you're dealing with some material that is a little more known in the mainstream, like Ghostbusters? By no ways are we going to call that a cult film. That's definitely like a mainstream
I mean,
hit.
Claire and Anthony, what they did, Claire and Anthony, who were the brother and sister and um, film filmmakers. What they did is like a 13-year journey to make that documentary, and they'd raised did like a crowd fund on Kickstarter, and they raised the funds, and I became quite friends with them, got to know them, and they did a lot of red. Claire, they do a lot of red carpet interviews in London, so they interviewed
Hmm.
a lot. They interviewed they go to a lot of premieres. They've done countless interviews, so they like yourself. I mean, they just and they just love film and they love cinema and again, and what they did with that documentary, I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but it's amazing. And there's a second part coming out, I believe.
Yes.
It should be this year, actually. It should be, I believe. Uh,
Too
Too
Hot
Hot
to
to Handle.
Handle, Remembering Ghostbusters 2.
So yeah, and that because obviously, those say like what interests me about those kind of films is the effects and the practical effects and cameras and how they filmed in New York and how they filmed certain things and the casting, obviously, and all that's in the documentary. But yeah, it's just that whole era. It was just a different era of um, filmmaking, and and that preserving it, I think, is important. You know, and of course, the other documentary that I'd worked on, but primarily just as a researcher and as an just as a researcher, was a documentary called Brothers in Arms: The Making of
The
Platoon,
Platoon. Yeah.
which is a fascinating documentary, which was like it kind of gives you the nuts and bolts of the chaos of that, what it was like to work on that film. Because they shot it in the Philippines, um, and just the madman genius, the madness of Oliver Stone. Uh, you know, they were capturing Vietnam, but while they were filming, actually in Philippines, there was like a revolution.
Mm.
There was another war going on. So yeah, and that was Paul Sanchez who directed it. Um, I kind of became friends with him. Really wanted to get involved with the documentary, so he kind of said, okay. So I did a lot of research, find photos, find things. Became really close friends with Tony Todd, who uh, was the Candyman, and he was in Platoon. And Tony was a very close friend, and he'd also we lost him as
Yes.
well last year. Which was just another blow, really. But I know I know that there's a new Final Destination film coming out,
It's a
and I know
reboot,
that
is it?
no, I couldn't be. I know that it's supposed to be uh, built around the character of Bloodworth, which is what who Tony is, and Tony is, they're dedicating it to Tony. So I'm guessing that it's just his character, really. I'm guessing that we get to what's it called, Final Destination Bloodline or
Mm.
Bloodlines. So I'm guessing it's going to give us the backstory or the who he is, or so. I guess we'll see. I guess that will be the final film that um, he will appear in of Final Destination. So yeah, and then I'm gonna do some more writing as well. I feel that the film industry is so radically changed now, and I've talked to so many people that even Ken Kelch, who was the cinematographer on the funeral, has said to me his career doesn't exist anymore.
Mm.
You're just not going to be able to make a living doing what he did. It's just impossible. Because he said the 90s was really the halcyon days of independent film, and it was just a different time. I guess it was easier to go from job to job, or to because of what it's all freelance work, so you never know when you're going to work. So
Yeah.
you, it's not what people think it is, and because obviously Ken Kelch, he taught as well, and the films that he made weren't obviously the Abel Ferrara films weren't by any means big budget. They're low, independent, um, made next to nothing, right? Which I think is more, you know, obviously again it's a niche market, isn't it? It's a cult market, it's a cult field, but I prefer them anyway, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I know that I really want to write a book about Dangerous Game. I really want to do a book on China Girl, and I have done a book on The Mask. I'm just waiting for a release of someone. But I've got like 40 interviews. I've interviewed everyone who worked on the Jim Carrey film, The Mask, and the book is called Inside the Mask: An Oral History. And I
Mhm.
talked to everyone bar none except Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz. But
Yeah.
that was that's going to be a really fascinating piece. And then, of course, there's yeah, I feel that if it's something that interests me, or not that it might, or something that like you say, it's fascinating because you were fascinated by reading it because it made you want to watch the film which you watched, and it blew you away because never heard of this film, The Funeral. And then when you want to read the stories, it kind of interests you more.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Well, I got this other game I like to play. It's called Rapid Fire Questions. So essentially what I'm going to do is just throw you some questions your way, and you're just going to try to get me as quick as you can for an answer, and we can
Yeah,
abbreviate on them as well. So the first one will be, we talked about Hellraiser a little bit with the documentaries involved in the writing as well. So let's just say you're in the Hellraiser universe, you're oblivious to all the things going around Pinhead and everything else. You come across the puzzle box, the lament configuration. Do you or do you not try to solve it?
I'd solve it.
Oh man, I don't know. I think anytime you come across any type of, I think for me, a mysterious object, mysterious book, whatever, I'm walking away from it. Why do you think that you will want to try to solve that thing?
Take risks. I'd be a risk taker. I think I would take a risk. It's a bit like Pandora's box, isn't it? Once you open it, there's no going
Hmm.
back. So I'd be tempted, maybe, maybe not, but it's yeah, I think that's what I would do.
Oh, risky.
Explore,
Yeah,
explore.
well, that's what it is. Like that's what the whole thing is, like explorers, right? And want to try to get to the other realm. Um, okay, so you've interviewed a lot of really cool people, like filmmakers, actors, people behind the scenes. Is there anyone you would ever love to interview that you haven't had a chance to do so yet?
Oh, um, it's a good question. Trying to think who there would be. You know, um, it's a very good question. I suppose maybe Quentin Tarantino would be quite an interesting one to
Mm.
speak with. Um, but yeah, no, I don't. I it's a good I couldn't answer it. I don't think. I think that there's so many people that I still want to talk to, but I couldn't come to my mind to say, Um, and I think that kind of everyone that well, maybe Kurt Russell definitely actually
Yeah.
Kurt Russell would be one. I didn't get a chance to speak to him about Soldier, but he's one I'd love to speak with. Um, only because nearly everyone that I spoke to has nothing but good things to say. So I would love to speak to him. And obviously, I love his work. Um, but I felt Soldier was such an underrated film, such an underrated performance, such an overlooked film. Um, its time is well due, and I know that there is going to be a release of that film
Mm.
on Blu-ray at some
Nice.
point. I won't say I know because I'm going to be part of it, so she's going to be interested. Uh, but yeah, no, I'd say Kurt Russell and Quentin Tarantino definitely ones that I'd like to speak with. Um, yeah, and I
Next
kind of
one.
spoke to yeah,
Go ahead. Spoke to, yes.
I kind of spoke to a kind of most of the people that I wanted to speak to. I've kind of spoken with. So yeah, no, go ahead, fire away.
Next one. So last year, my question was, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? And out of the 20 interviews I did last year, I think like 17 people said yes. So I'm moving away from that question. I'm going to replace it with a different one this year. And that question is, who was the best James Bond, in your opinion?
Best James Bond, in my opinion. My opinion would be uh, Sean Connery.
Hmm.
Um, right, and I obviously everyone's got a favorite. Everyone's got, they're all good in their own ways, and they interpret in their own ways. But I felt that what Sean Connery did, he basically invented it.
Yeah.
And obviously, Ian Fleming wasn't did not like it to begin with, but
Mm.
the film became a success because of Connery. I felt that you know he's also a very hard act to follow because he's just one of, again, he's another character. He's obviously one of a kind, Sean Connery. In the same way that Mel Gibson played Mad Max, um, and Kurt Russell Snake Plissken, and these are hard acts to follow. Obviously Tom Hardy, you can't compare with Mel Gibson. Just can't. I mean, Mel Gibson was just obviously a one of a kind screen presence, and it's the same thing with Sean Connery and all these kind of iconic characters that um, begin with. But everyone's. I mean, what are you? What's your?
Oh, Sean
Who's your
Connery.
favorite?
Sean
Yeah.
Connery all the way. I mean, there's others like other films I like I like some of the Daniel Craig films. I like some of the stuff that Timothy Dalton did.
Yeah.
Roger
Same.
Moore wasn't
Same.
wasn't really my favorite because I think just the movies themselves at the time weren't as, I think that's when it jumped the shark, so to speak, in a certain way to the James Bond films. But a lot of people would say Roger Moore. But for me, Sean Connery, I remember I bought a box set years ago and rewatched all those films like From Russia with Love and Goldfinger and Thunder, Thunderball. I mean, all of those are just absolutely great films. And I think him as not, I think the point you made that Sean Connery as just like as a personality and the unique thing about him, tall, handsome, but he's got that the accent as well, and he just everything about it kind of like embodies what people think of when they say James Bond. Um, even though these movies came out like 60 years ago, what have you, they're still to me kind of like the standard of what kind of like some that type of spy espionage kind of action thriller should be. I mean, the choreography for the fight scenes are the best, but hey, I will take that fight scene in From Russia with Love between Robert Shaw and Sean Connery, where they're on the
Yes.
train
On
going
the
back
train.
and forth, against any other Daniel Craig parkour, whatever that came out like, yeah, 60 years later. Because so yeah, Sean Connery for sure for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
100% Sean Connery. I mean,
last one,
it was just good.
last one.
Sure.
Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Ooh, no,
No.
I like
And you're correct.
plain pizza.
And you are
Yeah,
correct
I
as
like
well in
plain.
that.
Thank you. Yeah, I like plain pizza. So, um, yeah, there. No, I'm not. That sounds like a not a good mix. Um,
Oh, you'll
so
be
yeah,
surprised how many people have said yes. Like a majority of people have said no when I ask them this question, but there are a few that have said yes, and some of them have even gone extra and they said yes with pineapple and anchovies and all this other stuff. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm not eating pizza with you. Um, just to finish this up now, I myself this year have decided to step away from covering modern films like theatrical new releases and stuff like that because I want to concentrate on cult and classic cinema. That's the stuff I want to concentrate on this year. That's my focus for 2025 moving forward. That's why I'm taking all my content. And you yourself, this is something that you've been doing for a while now. And I absolutely love that so many people now, whether it be the creative VC guys that are doing in the Search for Darkness and all the documentaries they're doing, the Dead Mouse guys with their documentaries, all that stuff. There's such a a need for this stuff. There's a hunger for this stuff. I think a lot of people are so disenchanted with what modern movies are now that they're going back and looking at all this stuff. But like I said, you've been doing this stuff for a while now with your books and the way you produce your films. What is it about, do you think, from your perspective, about these older films, even though 20, 30 years on, still kind of speak to us? Is it a nostalgia thing? Is it I don't know, a thing where these were times when filmmakers and actors and, the craft itself just seemed much more personable, much more charismatic, much more kind of like feasible, and kind of like, I know for myself, like a big thing for me is like practical effects. I just love watching movies with practical effects. I love watching the 80s films where they dive into that stuff. What is it about you that really kind of like, you just love this stuff, especially the movies of the 80s and 90s, that really kind of speak to you as a, not only as a film fan, but a person, who's into this stuff, who's writes about it, who produces documentaries, who redoes research and such? What is it about these films that you love so much?
I think as well, obviously being like 100% with everything what you just said, everything, the nostalgia, everything. Again, it's the creativity, which is sadly eroded in the
Hmm.
industry because of economics, and because everything's about money. I know that obviously people have to earn money, but I feel that the creative process, it just feels it's gone, and with technology advancing, with the way things are, it's great that we can do what we can, preserving um, all this cinema and memories and history, and it's great that we can do that, and it's great what you do and what others do, and all these other documentarians do now, and people who write and produce and do all these things, because we're doing things that we could have never done growing up. So and we can, you know, keep the memories alive. And I think it's to do with the creative aspect. Everything was just, I feel it was so much better. Maybe because the internet wasn't around.
Hmm.
Maybe because it was a different time, a different era. Um, you know, uh, pretty much, yeah. It was just a better time. I think the world maybe might have been more peaceful. Um, there wasn't so much. We're so bombasted by information now. There's so much content. There's too much content.
Hmm.
It's overwhelming content. Streaming, social media, we're all being processed to it, and maybe because the internet wasn't around, or was only coming around early, that it was a better time, you know, um, and there wasn't so much hatred, maybe, or anger, or I mean, a lot of anger comes obviously from creativity, and um, some of the best films, obviously, a lot of the sets that have made the best films have been the worst experiences for people to make. But yeah, I mean, I still want to see Megalopolis, which was the Coppola film, because I'm much more interested in films that take risks than just, you know, repeat, or just, you know, um, what's the word? Formulaic, that
Hmm.
are formulaic, that are just the same old, same old. The remakes, the reboots, all these comic book films. I'm not saying I don't dislike them. I do like them, but I think there's just been an overwhelming uh, content, just the same, too much of the same thing. Maybe no risk, uh,
I agree
but
100%. It was a time for myself, I think it was a time when people's creativity were used to create something more positive, more art. And it was a way, if someone felt a certain way about things, they might write a book about it, they might create a movie. But in a way of doing so, there's a craft that was learned that didn't come easy. I think the problem these days is, my opinion, more than anything else. And it's something that I fully acknowledge that it's something that we have taken advantage of. I know I have as well, but everything is too easily at our fingertips now. You can make a movie on your phone. You can go on the internet and you can use AI to help you make something or other. You can do all this stuff, but I think, and as someone who grew up during a time when I remembered how hard it was to get hands-on equipment and get opportunities and such, when there was a movie that came out, very much so that the people who put their time in that film, that, there was some, hard yards to go through to get that film made. And not to say that independent films these days or whatever, or mainstream films these days, not to say that it isn't hard work put into it. I would say that, though, we're living in very fortunate times. However, those fortunate times and all the resources that come with it, I think we kind of sold our souls just a little bit in the
Yes.
application and attainment of that. And I think looking back on these older films, it's just a nice kind of reminder that, yeah, back then, if you wanted to create something and get it out there was some really big obstacles you had to overcome. And so by the time it was and not only that, if you wanted to watch it, you had to go in the theater, you had to watch it in the cinema. There were no other options until maybe after maybe VHS. And even then, options were limited. I don't know what it was like for yourself, Danny, over in the UK, but here in the video stores, if you don't get there quick enough to get that new release, that whole shelf is gone, and you have to wait another week or so to get that stuff back. And I think it's something that people these days, especially the younger generation, and I remind my kids about this as well, that they don't have that. There's a lot of luxury now, and I think from that comes a sort of laziness as well,
Yes.
in the regurgitation of
Yes.
stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's almost because it's given to them.
Yeah,
And it's it's the technology, as you
yeah,
say. It's a it's a blessing and a curse.
yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
you know, um, there's good things and bad things, and it's it's a hard yeah it's it's good that we can other people and other people as well can do these things now, but then it's making it easier and harder at the same time because there's just so many people. It becomes too easy. Everything's at your fingertips now, like you say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's yeah, you're right, absolutely.
So everyone out there, the greatest gangster movie you've never seen, Abe Ferrara's The Funeral. I got my copy. I really, really recommend everyone get yours as well and watch The Funeral as well if you can find it, whether it be buying it on a DVD and or streaming, what have you. I really recommend that people check out the film and read this book to know about the making of the film, and the creativity goes behind it, and it's about the crime genre in all its facets. Because Danny, I got to say, it's a really great work that you've done here, and thank you so much for being able to introduce this film to me. Because, like I said, always been on my radar, never had a chance to watch it, and I'm so glad that I have watched it because the actors involved, the filmmaker, A. Ferrara, the craft, everything else. It's a fantastic film. It really is. And it's a fantastic book. And in the show links, everyone listening, I'm going to have the links to where you can find Danny's work on Amazon, so you can buy all the books there. And I'm going to have all Danny's social stuff as well, because I really recommend people check out his social, whether it's on Instagram or what have you, because you're really great with putting up a lot of really cool stuff up there in your socials as well, I got to say. Especially lately with the death of Gene Hackney, you've been putting up some really cool interviews and stuff that you found. Your work as a researcher really comes in handy. I think finding these really cool interviews and such that you put up there for us to watch. I really enjoy that as well. And Danny, I thank you so very much for your time and for your work. And yeah, hopefully we can talk again in the future. It's been a pleasure.
And I thank you and God bless you and all the best to you and to 2025 and to all your whatever you're doing, carry on, keep going, and that's all you can do, and keep up the great work.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.